Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, so glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. A lot to talk about today. I'm sure you have huge Earth Day plans. Jim, I know you do every year. Happy Earth Day to everyone. It's just a total coincidence that Earth Day and Lenin's birthday are the same day. But nonetheless, I'm sure you'll be planting a tree or composting or getting rid of your aerosol cans or something today, right?
Remember, to truly honor the founder of Earth Day, compost your wife. That's one of the other aspects of this. I don't really think of it as Earth Day, Greg. I think of the week, the April 19th, 20th, 21st, 20th, around there, as stuff blowing up the week because of the anniversaries of Oklahoma City, the Boston Marathon, Waco, and everything else. So have a safe and hopefully uneventful stuff blowing up week. When this week passes, I always feel a little bit calmer.
If you're not familiar with what Jim referenced there, look up Ira Einhorn, one of the co-founders of Earth Day, who did, in fact, murder his girlfriend, fled the country for decades, and finally was extradited back. I think he's dead now, but he died in an American prison. So the good guys ultimately won there.
Greg, he ceased her carbon dioxide emissions. That's what he was, the really appropriate way of phrasing it. Some environmentalism designed to preserve life on this planet is a genuinely anti-life philosophy. Hey! Everybody, let's get off to a roaring, morbid start on Tuesday.
Wouldn't be the far left if they weren't looking to snuff out life. That's for sure. But we got some news from the Garden State on Earth Day right after we tell you a little bit about Open Phone. Because if you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a plumbing emergency, for example. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait or call the next one on the list? Chances are you just moved on. And with Open Phone, you'll never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers.
With AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, you'll be able to automate your follow-ups, ensuring you'll never miss a customer interaction again. So whether you're a one-person operation that's drowning in calls and texts, or you've got a large team that needs better collaboration tools, Open Phone is a no-brainer. See why more than 50,000 businesses trust Open Phone to manage their businesses' calls and texts.
Yeah, there's a good reason Open Phone is the #1 business phone system that streamlines and scales your customer to communications. Open Phone is now offering Three Martini Lunch listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/3ml. That's openphone.com/3ml. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Jim, we promised news from the Garden State on this Earth Day, and we will deliver CBS News with the story. A New York City jury convicted Nadine Menendez, the wife of convicted former New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, on Monday for her role in a years-long bribery scheme with her husband. She was found guilty on all 15 counts and faces sentencing June 12th. Nadine Menendez and her husband have both now been convicted of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in exchange for political favors to benefit the government of Egypt and enrich themselves. Bob Menendez, that is, resigned his U.S. Senate seat after being found guilty of accepting lavish bribes, including gold bars and cash. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison and must surrender to authorities on June 6th. He has vowed to appeal his conviction. He's done it in the most obsequious way because he was convicted in New York City, saying, just like President Trump experienced in New York City, the justice system just isn't working anymore. Hint, hint, Mr. President. Nadine Menendez not doing that. Her lawyer saying they obviously will appeal, and they're heartbroken with the verdict and all this. The prosecutors, of course, saying that Nadine and Senator Menendez, partners in crime. Over the span of 5 years, they agreed to and accepted all sorts of bribes, including gold bars, cash, a Mercedes-Benz convertible, and a no-show job. And now, Jim, they have matching bracelets.
You know, Greg, it's very easy to be cynical about politicians and their marriages, the idea that they're, often more about public images and maintaining a reputation. But honestly, it's just beautiful to see a couple that does everything together, including go to prison. This detail in the report, she was found guilty on all 15 counts and faces sentencing June 12th. She wore a face mask and had no visible reaction when her verdict was read. I'm going to skip over the Botox joke and just say, I'm glad she doesn't, of all the problems she's got, she doesn't have to worry about COVID. She's still masking. Taylor Lorenz is probably very proud of her at this moment, And look, if there's anything Taylor Lorenz is into, it's convicted criminals, or soon to be convicted criminals, I suppose. The other detail of the story that jumped out at me, but why did the Menendez, besides greed, this detail, Nadine Menendez also needed a new car after her old one was destroyed. When she struck and killed a man crossing a street, she did not face charges in the crash. Greg, don't you hate it when that happens? My car's ruined. Also, there's a corpse in the front grill from where I ran him down. But other than that, it's really just the pain in getting that new. That's why I need all those gold bars from Egypt and things like that. I will make two kind of closing thoughts on this, as this presumably closes the book on the Menendezes. One, once again, credit to John Fetterman, the only Democrat who seemed to want to really talk about this after the indictment. There were a couple of murmuring, I think you should resign type, soft-spoken criticism from fellow Democratic senators. Fetterman would bring this up any opportunity. Ask him how he's doing. He'd say, I'm doing fine. And, Menendez is a scum. That kind of, was happy to bring that up. And I just kind of observed that, look, people argue about Trump and they'll bring up, he's a convicted felon, and all of this, everything that a Republican does sticks to him and gets brought up over and over again. And we're always told that it's it represents an endemic culture of corruptions. There are broad lessons that can always be taken from a scandal involving a Republican. Generally, the lesson is don't vote for Republicans, is what the media wants you to think of this. When a Democrat gets caught in a scandal, and it happens with surprising frequency, it's just a bad thing that happens. There's no broader lesson. There's nothing symbolic about it. There's nothing, no reflective of a character flaw or reflective of a flaw. No, it's just a bad thing that happened. The guy who was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate was taking gold bricks from Egypt for, months and months. Don't you think that'd be a really big deal? That would be that would be the sort of thing that would be coming up in Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel monologues and a Saturday Night Live sketch, and you feel it's a ridiculous, over the top corruption scandal. And I feel like this kind of came and went and was a bottom of page A3 kind of story. It was a bigger deal in New Jersey. It was a bigger deal in some of the New York media. But I just kind of feel like the media gets embarrassed when a Democrat gets caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And so they give very much the check the box journalism. They cover it, but they don't give it the broader narrative, drum beating type stuff. And it deserved more attention than it got. I think because we just like making fun of him, it got plenty of coverage on this podcast.
It's true. No, you're absolutely right. If this was a Republican, it would have been in the A block or the B block, certainly, of pretty much every day that the trial was going on the evening news, front page of most of the major newspapers and all that. But it's Bob Menendez, and we're just going to pretend it's not actually happening. But here's the question. He's got to surrender June 6th. He's obviously begging Trump for a pardon, maybe trying to follow the Rod Blagojevich path. Do you think Trump actually gives it to him?
God, I hope not. Here's the, I don't understand. I understand Blagojevich did The Apprentice, and that's when, Trump became buddy-buddy with him. There's a theory also that, Trump likes people who are compromised, likes people who are dependent upon him because he believes that they will be loyal because they, I don't think that's a good way of going through life. I think these people are damaged goods, and I don't know, once a crook, always a crook. I don't think you can, set your compass to true north based on following the moral judgment of these people. And, if you're a president, you can do favors for everybody. But to quote Blagojevich, the ability to forgive is a valuable bleeping thing. And I don't understand why the president is so eager to help out Democrats who are in every kind of possible trouble. But then again, it's not like the public is going to hold them accountable. That's foreshadowing one of our future martinis.
Yes, indeed. I think you're right about the Celebrity Apprentice thing. That's actually a much bigger factor in all of this than anybody wants to actually admit. So, if Gary Busey or, one of those other people that were on that show.
Oh, Busey I would pardon, just because of Lethal Weapon,
Fair point. Well, sometimes the media doesn't cover stuff at all, or at least not as much as they should, like the Bob Menendez trial. Other times, there's a very binary way that the media go about it. And go to Ground News and figure out what both sides are saying, because it really does matter in understanding the news. And we talked just yesterday about the Chris Van Hollen coverage of going to El Salvador. On the left, he's standing up to tyranny in the headlines. On the right, hey, you kind of forgot to point out and admit the gang ties that this guy has down there, Garcia. So luckily, there's Ground News, which offers diverse perspectives and avoids manipulative algorithms and gives you the fuller picture.
With ground news, you get details about the source of your information, including if the news outlet has a political bent, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them, empowering you to compare how different news sources from around the world cover the same story. For example, they evaluate National Review as right of center and highly reliable, and that's absolutely true on both cases. Expand your view of the news by signing up for your Ground News account today and get access to the mobile app, website, browser extension, and exclusive newsletters so you can have a well-rounded view of the world, think critically about what you read, and find common ground between perspectives.
Visit groundnews.com/martini today to get 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan and get access to all of their news analysis features. That's groundnews.com/martini for 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan for a limited time only. All right, Jim, on to what is definitely a bad martini, and this probably doesn't come as a huge shock, but the confirmation of it is certainly not good. Hat tip over to the folks at the Washington Free Beacon, Matthew Shao, I think is how you say that last name, with the story, a Chinese satellite company with ties to the communist country's military is providing imagery to Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis to help target American warships and commercial vessels in the Red Sea, according to U.S. officials. Changguang Satellite Technology Company, Ltd., a firm linked to the Chinese People's Liberation Army, has continued to supply the Houthis with satellite intelligence. Despite multiple warnings from the Trump administration, U.S. officials told the Financial Times, quote, "The United States has raised our concerns privately numerous times to the Chinese government on the company's role in supporting the Houthis in order to get Beijing to take action." That's from a senior State Department official. The official described Beijing's tacit support, quote unquote, as yet another example of China's empty claims to support peace, adding, "We urge our partners to judge the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese companies on their actions, not their empty words." And the story goes on to explain this is all in the context of an escalating trade war as well. So, Jim, we knew the Houthis and the Chinese were tight based on the fact that the Chinese ships were allowed into the Red Sea and most others weren't for a long time. So what do you make of the fact that the Chinese are directly aiding the Houthis and potentially putting American lives in danger?
Yeah, it's one thing when the Houthis and the Chinese have a de facto alliance, but something like that, helping them target opposing ships. That is now it's an offensive alliance. Now it is actually helping the Houthis do damage to other countries. Today's Morning Jolt is all about some of the controversy about Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon. But also, when Trump was defending him yesterday, he said Hegseth was doing a great job, asked the Houthis how he's doing. And I kind of feel rather fascinatingly, we've heard a lot about the leaks on Signal about the strikes on the Houthis. We aren't hearing that much about the Houthis themselves, about these airstrikes and the effects and whether this is actually degrading the Houthis' capabilities. Short answer is yes, as you would expect. When you're doing a couple hundred airstrikes and you do sometimes 20-some in a day, yes, it's going to have an effect. So I try to go through, you have to go through a lot of foreign media to try to get a good handle on this stuff. And it's one of those things where you're doing about as much damage as you can do from airstrikes, but in the end, you need probably ground forces to dislodge the most dug-in troops. The legitimate government of Yemen, yes, they do have one. It doesn't have a lot of control of a lot of area, but apparently there's rumor that they're amassing 80,000 troops to try to retake the kind of western coastline, which is the one that abuts the Red Sea. If they were to be able to successful in doing that, that would severely diminish the Houthis' capabilities to attack ships in the passing through the Red Sea. So hopefully that's the case. It's a rumor, no guarantee of it. But there's also reports in Saudi media that the Houthis are laying out landmines in order to defend some of the coastal cities in that region. So it seems like the Houthis seem to think an offensive is either on the way or could be coming. So that's all fairly good news. I think the Pentagon probably could do more to elaborate on what's being done. They get a couple of basic numbers about number of airstrikes and things like that. But I think it's probably a good, it's been about 5 weeks of this operation. Like I said, lots of sorties, a lot of ordnance dropped on the Houthis, blowing up ammo dumps and command centers and things like that. They have some underground bunkers and tunnels and places like that. Probably not as extensive as Hamas, but that's, everybody in the world knows that if you're above ground, the U.S. Air Force can hit you whenever they want. Also, another interesting detail, apparently the Houthis have shot down 6 drones. The Houthis are boasting that this is a quagmire to the United States. It's one of those rare military quagmires without any casualties so far. So I don't think we're not that bad. But having said that, no human casualties. And these drones cost about $30 million a pop, so you'd probably rather not lose any of those. So just one of those things where we are making a decent amount of progress against the Houthis. And if you look at this and there's been a little bit of grumbling and, what's the long-term plan and is this really having the effect? if you look at this as a de facto proxy war against China and its efforts to restrict trade through that trade route for everybody except their ships, all of a sudden this becomes very important. And for what it's worth, polling at the beginning of the month said that about 70% of Americans supported U.S. airstrikes against the Houthis. So again, I'd kind of prefer the administration lay out more information. I think they've got a strong argument to make here. But maybe there's just other stuff on Hegseth's mind. I just think basically maybe for the next signal discussion about airstrikes, just invite the entire country. Just let us all in on it. And that way we can all feel like we're well informed and being kept up to date on things.
That might be the better way to go. I was thinking he needs to give it up for Lent or retroactively give it up for Lent, I guess. But maybe just letting everybody in on it would be the easier thing to do here. So are we in two proxy wars at the same time with this thing now? Because obviously Iran backs the Houthis and now we've got the Chinese involvement here. I don't know how many proxy wars you can fight with the same fight, but apparently we're going to find out.
A recurring theme of my writing in recent years has been, whatever you want to call it, the axis of the devils, the axis of the A word that my Ukrainian legislator friend used. Russia, China, Iran, to a certain extent North Korea, to a certain extent Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all the H guys. They all are in this loose affiliation. And no, they don't all have the same interests. They don't all have the same worldview, but they all hate us. And they all want to undermine our ability, our power and our ability to influence events overseas. So we shouldn't be all that shocked by it. And I don't know if you can successfully have a worldview where you're like, well, we're going to be really tough on Iran, but we're going to try to have peace with Russia. We're going to try to have peace with China. It's that when they're all working together, there's these interlocking interests and efforts to help each other. And I think this company providing satellite information and things like that to the Houthis is a vivid demonstration of this. I'm glad the U.S. is calling it all out. And I suspect there could be further efforts taken against this Chinese company. And remember, there's really no such thing as a private Chinese company. They're all either state-run or effectively, heavily influenced by the Chinese government.
Heavily influenced is a very polite way to say it. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So, hey, you know what? I'm a magnanimous guy. The best way you can help the planet today is to plant a tree or a bush, and I got the perfect way to do it. Fast Growing Trees. It's the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers. Fast Growing Trees offers a wide selection of plants from fruit and privacy trees to shrubs, all tailored to your climate and your space. They'll gobble up all that supposedly horrible carbon dioxide and give you fresh, beautiful oxygen.
Now, you don't need to have a yard or a lot of space. You can grow lemon, avocado, olive, or fig trees inside your home, and that's on top of the wide variety of houseplants that are available. The experts at Fast Growing Trees curate thousands of plants, so you can find the perfect fit for your specific climate, location, and needs.
We've had so many plants from Fast Growing Trees, been very satisfied with the fig and the monstera and the spice plants, which Mrs. Columbus has incorporated into the meals. We're about to get the snake plant. We've had the lemon plant. So many different varieties there. This spring, get up to 50% off select plants at fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. Plus, use the code Martini at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. Visit fastgrowingtrees.com/martini and use the code Martini. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms do apply. Again, fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. It's the crazy martini that just keeps on giving. Andrew Cuomo, of course, the disgraced former governor of New York State, is running for mayor of New York City. And as you pointed out in the Jolt earlier, he is the overwhelming favorite right now in the Democratic primary, which means he's the overwhelming favorite to be the next mayor of New York City. But that doesn't mean that Republicans are going to make it an easy path to Gracie Mansion. House Republicans have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi, according to the New York Post, to charge former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo for making, quote, criminally false statements to Congress, citing overwhelming evidence that an audit he presided over had lowballed nursing home deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic. The House Oversight Committee re-upped the criminal referral after then Attorney General Merrick Garland declined last year to prosecute Cuomo for allegedly triggering, helping to draft, and reviewing a July 6, 2020 report that undercounted the total number of deaths in senior care facilities by 46%. Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says Andrew Cuomo is a man with a history of corruption and deceit, now caught red-handed, lying to Congress during the Select Committee's investigation into the COVID-19 nursing home tragedy. The official number of fatalities in the report was somewhere north of 6,400, and they believe it's actually closer to 9,000, especially if you count those who are also in the hospitals. So, Jim, there's also just news in the past few days. that Cuomo, really through the state of New York, meaning New York taxpayers' dollars, are being spent on this to settle a lawsuit with one of Cuomo's groping accusers, Charlotte Bennett, for a total of $450,000. And yet this guy just keeps on trucking, at least according to the latest polls in New York City. And honestly, if he is charged by the Trump Justice Department, that'll probably be as good for Andrew Cuomo in New York City as it was for Donald Trump to be charged by Joe Biden's Justice Department in the Republican presidential primaries.
I was going to say, I can't imagine a more sweet deal than to be an elected official, to engage in bad behavior, to get a lawsuit over it, and then settle it with taxpayer money. Like why are New York City taxpayers on the hook for that? I wrote about Cuomo's comeback actually twice in the Washington Post. I wrote back in December. I wrote one and say, come on, you can't really tell me that, New Yorkers, as bad judgments as they've made in many mayoral races over the years, they can't really be contemplating a comeback for Andrew Cuomo. Last week while I was away, the Post ran another second column that was basically like, yeah, apparently they are. Really kind of a frightening. This is our crazy martini, but it's also a depressing and maybe even disturbing martini. The thing that actually forced Cuomo out was, I believe, we're up to 9 cases of sexual harassment. You and I would probably argue he should have been tossed out on his keister long ago over the COVID stuff. And it was interesting to watch some people saying, well, if he's making a comeback and nobody's worried about it, nobody's upset about it, that's the end of Me Too. I think it was Kate Rofe writing in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago. Well, yeah, it's the case. It's also the end of COVID, like in our politics. If Andrew Cuomo can come back, and when I say like, it's not like a matter of like, oh, there's a chance he could be elected. There hasn't been a lot of polling, but a poll about earlier this month, he was at 39%. Next closest guy, Mamdani, who's a state councilman, at 15%. Everybody else in single digits. So right now, he's going to walk to a run. I know they have ranked voting over there, and good to get a little bit complicated. But right now, Andrew Cuomo is way ahead, which, he's been endorsed by 2 of the unions that called for his resignation, right? That's how things, that old saying, things can change in a New York minute. Eric Adams, who's now running as an independent, is at, Eric Adams, the mayor brought to you by Turkish Airlines. You got to get that in as our 4th ad of the day. He's polling at 7%, which is generally, it's a bad spot for an incumbent.
Yeah, not good.
And just kind of a bunch of Wall Street is saying, Cuomo seems like the most reasonable one. They're getting on board. And the thing that just kind of I find infuriating, because I'm like, come on, it's New York City. Like there's 8 million people there. There's tons of lawmakers. There's got to be some other option. And you're like, well, maybe some other Democrat, even if I don't like other Democrats, that they don't have the scandal history that Cuomo does. Well, you've got a Mamdani, who was asked, what's your policy? Well, he's going to get tough on crime. And by that, I mean, he's going to arrest Netanyahu if he ever comes to New York. That's his idea of getting tough on crime. Hey, Greg, what New York City laws has Bibi Netanyahu broken?
None that I'm aware of.
But details. We're just going to arrest him because we don't like him because it's very popular. Because I'm gonna appeal to those anti-Israel voters and all that stuff. And the other, so you're like, he's going to win the Democratic primary. New York City's got Republicans. There are not a lot of them, but you got to have some option. It certainly looks like the nominee is going to be Curtis Sliwa. I'm always an entertaining figure. God bless him for his work with the Guardian Angels. But this is the guy who always walks around with his red beret like he's getting ready to lead a coup against General Esperanza in Valverde. And he ran against Eric Adams last time and lost 67% to 28%. I have no reason to think he'd do all that differently against Cuomo. So Cuomo looks like a shoo-in. And you want to talk about like a guy who left office with not just the COVID scandal, not just the sexual harassment scandal. Remember the fact that he got Chris Cuomo roped in and effectively got his brother fired from his job because they brought his brother in for the PR effort.
Yep.
He was, the entire narrative of him is, the book deal. By the way, he got to keep the money from the book deal. A court overturned it. He is just the luckiest SOB in the entire, world of politics, and he's about to go into Gracie Mansion. Now, we don't often talk modern pop culture. We're Generation Xers. Most of our references are, some would say they're not just dated, they're carbon dated. But I have caught a couple episodes of the new Marvel TV series Daredevil, in which Kingpin, the villain who controls all the organized crime in New York City, has been elected mayor. And I don't know, is it foreshadowing? Is it clairvoyant? It just feels like this perfect pop culture parallel of a deeply corrupt figure who appears to be Italian, stepping into a role of mayor of the New York City and immediately saying, I'm going to get Daredevil. I'm going to, take over. I'm going to, no one can stop me now. So New York City mayor, New York City voters, guys, you have a chance to stop this. Stop that train. It's coming closer.
What's the problem? All of this happened 4 years ago. Move on.
This is the silver lining. We get to hear Greg Columbus's impression of Andrew Cuomo for the next 4 years, probably. Maybe 8. He wants to be president someday. That like this, if you don't stop him now, he's going to just keep on going.
It's a special time in New York City when you got a runaway front runner, and basically the whole attitude is, I guess. It's also the problem with one-party rule. When no other party has
rule,
a chance.
and I should point. I mentioned 2 of the Democrats. There are apparently like 90 of them. Like there's just this unbelievable crowd, and and when they're all, it's very hard to stand out when you're in a crowd that big. So people go with the name they know, and I don't know whether it's happy memories of his. Like, I'd be interested to poll how many people think he's his father. Like that'd be another curious question.
Hey, after the RFK Jr., RFK Senior poll, anything's possible.
Yeah, for those people who thought he was his father. Did they think he got better? Did they think that was a rough hit? They even had him to the ground, but he just came back. And so democracy. We're doing a great job with it.
Obviously, yeah. Voter education right up there at the tippy top. Jim, have a great Earth Day. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Columbus of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Columbus. Have a terrific Tuesday. Join us again Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.